Quietly wealthy people are almost impossible to spot from the outside. They're probably driving something 3 or 4 years old with more miles on it than they're entirely comfortable admitting. They're not dressed to impress anyone in particular. They're not the loudest person in the room about what they earn or what they own. But there's something about their relationship with money that's noticeably different from almost everyone around them. And it's not their salary. At some point, most of them made the same 7 quiet cuts. Not to luxury. Not to anything that would have felt like a real sacrifice at the time. 7 completely ordinary, totally normal purchases that everyone around them is still making on autopilot every single week without a second thought. The combined cost of those 7 habits runs somewhere between $12,000 and $18,000 a year for the average person carrying all of them. This video is those 7 cuts. Some of these will feel like common sense the second you hear them. A couple will land differently, not because the number is the biggest, but because you'll know exactly when you last did it. And the last one on this list is the one people keep thinking about after the video ends. I'll let you figure out why when we get there. Number 7 first, it's the one with the clearest math. Nobody decided to make food delivery a significant part of their monthly budget. It just kind of crept in. One Tuesday night when cooking felt like too much, a Sunday when the fridge was empty, and then slowly, quietly, every other evening when hunger arrived about 20 minutes before motivation did. Here's what the checkout screen doesn't put in big numbers. That $12 meal you just ordered? By the time the delivery fee, the service fee, the small order fee, and the tip, the app already pre-checked at 20% all land, you're paying somewhere between $22 and $28 for the exact same food, from the exact same kitchen. You could have driven there in 8 minutes, walked in, picked it up, and been back on your couch before the app even finished finding you a driver. Do that 4 times a week, and you're spending between $4,000 and $5,400 a year on food you could have had for a third of the price. And that's before the monthly delivery membership, the one you pay so you can access the supposedly lower delivery fees. Read that sentence back slowly. You're paying a subscription for the privilege of paying fees. That's not a service. That's a magic trick. I know someone who canceled every delivery app on a Sunday in January, put a coffee maker on her counter, and started meal prepping on Sundays. By April, she had saved enough to pay off a credit card she'd been carrying for 2 years. The food tasted the same. The commute to the kitchen was significantly shorter. The person who built the app isn't paying delivery fees, they're collecting them. Quietly wealthy people ran that number once, looked at it clearly, and decided $4,000 a year wasn't a price worth paying to avoid a short drive. Number 6. Subscription creep. In 2023, researchers asked a large group of Americans to estimate their monthly subscription spending before checking their bank statements. The average guess was $86 a month. The actual figure was $219, a $133 gap, every single month, between what people thought was leaving their account and what actually was. And look, the list is always the same. A streaming service still running from a show that ended 18 months ago. A fitness app used 3 times in February and avoided ever since out of a kind of mutual guilt. Cloud storage upgraded when a photo library got too big, still the exact same size. A language learning app from the trip you were definitely going to take. A news site from one article someone wanted to read in 2022 and frankly never found. An annual software renewal that arrived by email at a moment nobody was paying attention. And at least one premium tier that converted quietly from a free trial without saying a word about it, like a house guest who never left. This isn't forgetfulness, it's design. Every subscription company on the planet makes cancellation harder than sign up, sends renewal notifications as quietly as possible, and keeps the monthly charge just small enough that it never quite triggers a real look. The entire business model runs on one assumption, that you won't check. Meet Aisha. She's 32, works in marketing, earns a decent salary, and genuinely couldn't have told you her monthly subscription total without sitting down and adding it up. When she did, the number was $247 a month. 8 services. She was actively using 3 of them. The other 5 had been quietly billing her like very polite strangers she'd completely forgotten she'd invited in. Wealthy people audit subscriptions twice a year. It takes 45 minutes and saves most people between $1,500 and $2,500. The only tool you need is a bank statement and a willingness to feel mildly embarrassed by what you find. The rule is one question. Have I used this in the past 60 days? If the answer is no, cancel it today, not next month. Today. Because the subscription company is absolutely professionally full-time counting on next month. Number 5, the maintenance gap. Here's one that almost never gets talked about directly, but once you see it, it's everywhere. Quietly wealthy people spend money preventing problems. Most people spend money fixing them. A $120 annual car service prevents a $900 repair. A $40 water filter prevents $1,800 in bottled water spending over the course of a year. A $200 plumber inspection prevents a $4,000 emergency call on a Sunday afternoon when your options are limited and your emotional regulation is not at its peak. A $15 tube of caulk prevents water damage that costs more to sort out than a month's rent. I know someone who put off a $60 dental checkup for 2 years, just kept moving it. The checkup eventually became a root canal. The root canal cost $1,400 after insurance, took most of a Thursday, and is now her go-to example of a decision she would make differently. She paid the $60 version of that problem $1,400 and a genuinely miserable afternoon. The expensive version of every problem is the one you didn't see coming because you skipped the cheap version that would have caught it. Here's the part that really stings. Most people don't have the cash buffer to choose prevention in the first place. If $120 isn't sitting comfortably in the account, you skip the service. So when the $900 repair shows up, you put it on a card, pay interest on it, and end up slightly further behind. Then the next emergency finds you in the same position. The prevention gap is one of the quietest reasons people stay stuck at a certain financial level, and almost nobody names it as such. Quietly wealthy people aren't better at this because they're more disciplined. They have the buffer that makes the $120 decision easy, and the $120 decision keeps protecting them from the $900 one. Look at what the first 4 items have in common. None of them involve extravagance. None of them are the kind of spending you'd look at from the outside and call irresponsible. They're all just ordinary, normal, the kind of thing everyone around you is doing without thinking twice about it, which is exactly what makes them so effective at quietly reshaping your financial position over time. The next 3 are the ones people push back on hardest, not because they're the most expensive, because they feel the most personal. Number 4, the comparison trap. There's a category of spending that researchers have studied for years and that almost nobody in personal finance content addresses directly, probably because naming it requires admitting something slightly uncomfortable about yourself. It's the purchase that happened because you saw someone else's version first. The holiday you booked the week after seeing a friend's photos, the car upgrade that started as a vague thought when a neighbor came home with a new one, the restaurant you went to because a colleague mentioned it at lunch, the jacket that caught your eye on someone whose style you admire, the kitchen renovation that felt completely fine until a friend redid theirs and suddenly yours felt like a crime scene. None of these felt like comparison spending in the moment. They felt like your own decisions. They mostly weren't, quite. Sound familiar? Studies consistently show social comparison spending accounts for 15 to 30% of discretionary purchases for people who haven't identified the pattern. The trigger isn't envy exactly. It's something closer to possibility. Seeing something makes it feel available and normal in a way it simply didn't before you saw it. And then your wallet opens before your brain has finished the sentence. Quietly wealthy people aren't immune to this. They just developed one habit. Before any purchase that followed seeing someone else's version, they ask whether they actually wanted it before they saw it. If the honest answer is no, they put it down. Not every time, but often enough that the category stops running on autopilot. One question. That's the whole defense. Number 3, the tech upgrade cycle. Every September, Apple releases a new iPhone. The marketing around each launch is genuinely excellent. I say that with complete sincerity and only moderate irritation, at creating a specific feeling of inadequacy about the device already in your pocket. A phone that was considered impressive technology 14 months ago now somehow feels like it's letting you down, like you owe it an apology and a trade-in. The reality is that a 2 or 3-year-old phone does exactly the same job as a new one for about 95% of what people actually use phones for. The camera improvements are measurable in a lab. They're basically invisible in your camera roll. The processor upgrade matters for applications that don't exist yet at the consumer level. And the new color is just a new color, in case that needed saying out loud. The average American upgrades every 2.5 years at $800 to $1,200 a device. Hold it one extra cycle, and that's $3,000 to $5,000 over a decade sitting in your account instead of somewhere else. And it goes well beyond phones. The laptop that's 3 years old and runs everything you use without complaint. The TV that's not 4K but shows everything you watch clearly. The car with 90,000 miles that gets you everywhere you need to go. Quietly wealthy people have one rule for replacement. Does it still do the job? If yes, it stays. The upgrade happens when the thing stops working, not when a very well-produced keynote suggests it should. Number 2, social obligation spending. This is the one that gets the most pushback, so let me be precise about what it actually means, because it's not what you're probably expecting. It's not about being cheap with people you love. It's about the spending that feels compulsory, but when you look at it honestly, isn't. The birthday gift budget that quietly inflated because someone in the group started spending more and it felt awkward not to keep up. The bachelorette weekend that cost $400 because nobody wanted to be the one to say that was too much. The housewarming gift that felt like it was making a statement about the friendship. The holiday gift exchange with a $50 limit that everyone silently ignored, so now it's effectively $120. And the person who actually spent $50 spends the following week quietly wondering if people noticed. You're not buying the gift, you're buying the absence of awkwardness, which, when you frame it that way, is a genuinely strange thing to spend $80 on for someone you're not particularly close to. The average American spends around $3,000 a year on gifts. A significant portion of that is meaningful and worth every dollar. But researchers who study this consistently find that 30 to 40% of gift spending is driven primarily by fear of judgment rather than genuine desire to give. Quietly wealthy people are generous. They just decided at some point to give based on what feels right for the relationship, not what feels safe relative to what someone else might spend. The person receiving the gift almost never knows the difference. The person giving it always does. Number 1, the aspiration purchase. This is the one that almost never shows up in personal finance conversations because it doesn't reduce neatly to a number. But it might be the most expensive habit on this entire list. It's the guitar that's now a very expensive hat rack. The treadmill in the guest bedroom that guests use to drape their towels over. The bread maker that made bread exactly once and has lived in the back of the cupboard ever since like a retired employee nobody told to leave. The camera that came out of its bag twice. The language course for the language you were definitely going to learn. The home gym that felt like freedom in February and became a storage problem by April. The aspiration purchase isn't really a purchase. It's a bet on a future version of yourself, made with real money today, on the assumption that the future version actually shows up. Quietly wealthy people buy things for who they actually are, not who they're planning to become. That's not pessimism. It's one specific test. If you genuinely want to learn guitar, you borrow one first, or find a beaten-up secondhand starter for $80 and play it for 3 months. If it becomes something you do and love and keep doing, you buy the one you've earned. The purchase follows the behavior. It doesn't try to create it. Aisha spent around $1,400 last year on aspiration purchases across 4 different categories. When she wrote down what she'd actually used, the answer was nothing. Every single one had been bought for a future version of herself who never quite showed up. The money was real. The future self wasn't. The test is one question. Am I already doing this thing with whatever I currently have, and the only thing holding me back is not having the proper equipment yet? If yes, buy it. If the reason you haven't started is that you don't have the stuff yet, the stuff isn't the real barrier. That's the one. 7 purchases. None of them dramatic. None of them the kind of thing you'd look at and call a problem. And together, for the average person carrying all 7 at once, somewhere between $12,000 and $18,000, leaving their life every year in ways that never once felt like real spending. The people in your life who always seem to have money didn't get there through discipline you don't have or information you never had access to. They made 7 quiet cuts, usually without telling anyone, and the effect of those decisions showed up in their account years later, looking from the outside like they were just naturally good with money. They were, but not in the mysterious way that usually implies. They were good with money the way anyone can be, by looking honestly at where it actually goes and quietly stopping sending it to the places that never gave them anything real in return. Drop a comment telling me which one hit closest to home. I've been guilty of more than one of these myself. The aspiration purchases one in particular is something I'd rather not get into right now, so this is a completely no judgment zone. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And maybe, just maybe, close that browser tab you've had open for 3 days with something in the cart. I'll see you in the next one.